Yo, welcome back to the MMA Fight Realm. Thanks for tuning in. If you are new, it is your boy Chris, and I'm back with another picks and predictions video. This time for UFC Abu Dhabi. Cory Sandhagen taking on Umar Nurmagomedov in the main event. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of these picks in the comments, and let me know your picks in the comments as well, man. Let's break it down. Leading off the card, we got Sedriques Dumas taking on Tiuliulin. Low level fight here, but Dumas, he was going to step in on short notice in the Saudi Arabia card to take on Tiuliulin, and I was picking Dumas to get it done on short notice. So now, with even more time to prepare, the pick is gonna remain the same, except this time with even a bit more confidence, honestly, because I just don't rate Tiuliulin very highly, and he's now 36. He's 11-9, only one win in the UFC, and it was against Jamie Pickett, who, we all know Jamie Pickett. If you are familiar with his game, he's got a lot of quit and doesn't have great cardio, not a great striker. Tiuliulin was able to take advantage of that, and credit to Tiuliulin, he picked up a win in the UFC, but the guy in his other fights is just getting finished. He's not showing good ground game. He's getting taken down fairly easily. Jun Young Park worked the finish in the first round. RoboCop worked the finish in the first round. CLD got it done in the second round. And these guys, although they are talented fighters that I just mentioned, I just think that Dumas, not as talented, but he's got the durability, he's got the youth, and I think he's gonna have a good grappling edge in this fight. So we saw that against Cody Brundage, and the loss to Josh Friend did not look good, but we saw that in his next fight against Cody Brundage, a lot of improvement in the grappling, a lot of improvement in the cardio, and he was able to get it done against Cody Brundage, who is a great wrestler himself. And then we saw him get some takedowns against Abu Dhabi, some clutch takedowns that got him the win in that fight in Abu Dhabi. So this guy has gotten his hand raised in Abu Dhabi before. I'm sticking with Sedriques Dumas. I think he's got the higher ceiling, and I think he has all the tools to get it done against a guy like Tiuliulin. 11-9, guys, 36 years old. I just think it's past his time now, and Dumas, right place, right time. I think he's gonna get this one done either by late finish or decision. All right, next up, we got Herbert taking on Rolando Bedoya. About a year layoff for both of these fighters, but Rolando Bedoya just 27 years old, Herbert now 36 years old. So, and he's actually starting to show his age in his fights. We saw that against Ferguson. Did not want to strike much, he was just trying to become a clinch fighter, a wrestler. He was trying to get the fight to the ground. I don't know what he saw in the tape against Ferguson, where he felt he might have had a grappling advantage, but he struggled heavily getting the fight to the ground, and the clinch control did not work in his favor. Ferguson was able to get the job done over Herbert, and just overall not a great fight. And to my understanding, man, I think Herbert is a kickboxer. Herbert, great Muay Thai, great kickboxer. We saw that in Cage Warriors. We saw that in his upbringing in the UFC. He was able to knock down Ilia Topuria with his striking. And for me to see him shift in game plans, shift in styles, just goes to show that I think the age is starting to catch up to the guy. And Rolando Bedoya, former welterweight, and although he didn't look like he should be at welterweight, he was packing some extra pounds, and he has transitioned to 155 now he's rocking some abs. He's training at Shoot the Box. I believe he always has been, but the guy is tough. And we saw that against Song Kanan. He got dropped, but still took that fight to decision. And against Chaos Williams, a guy who has proven to show he's got one-touch power, did not get finished by Chaos Williams. Was an extremely close fight. You could even make the case that he could have gotten his hand raised in that one. So, 0-2 in the UFC, but I'm not ready to call it quits on Rolando Bedoya. I think he's got a boatload of potential. He just has to really put it all together and get it done here. Herbert, on the later half of his career now, 36 years old, a year layoff for the guy. You got to imagine that he was probably dealing with, some setbacks. But Rolando Bedoya, I just think he has another guy with the higher ceiling, more potential to get this one done. I think he's a decent striker, and Herbert was a great striker, and he's starting to slow down a bit. So Bedoya, right place, right time. I think he can get this one done here against Herbert. So I'm picking Rolando Bedoya by decision. Next up, we got Victoria Dudakova taking on Sam Hughes. Now, Hughes has been known for pulling off some upsets. All right, she was a plus 125 in her win over Elise Reed, plus 180 in her win over Estela Nunes, and then a plus 220 in her win against Jacqueline Amorim. So, she's proven to be a ticket killer. So now she's facing out another up-and-comer, Victoria Dudakova, on a 2-fight win streak. And, she hasn't really proven much, though. Dudakova, she's a rising prospect. But in that fight against Jinyu Fry, although she claimed to have staph infection and, she wasn't at 100%, she was getting taken down in that fight. Jinyu Fry was having, good success on the feet. Victoria Dudakova didn't look like the serious prospect that that was on paper. She's undefeated. I believe she's 7-0. This girl is definitely on the rise. But Sam Hughes, I think she desperately needs a win here. And, Hughes, she's tough. She's tough, but tough doesn't always get you the win. And, although I wouldn't be surprised if she gets the job done in this fight, I just can't back Sam Hughes. I think Dudakova is going to show that she's got the size advantage in this fight. And Hughes, not the best takedown defense. She does give up a lot of takedowns. Dudakova, she's very, I would say, well-rounded for a girl who's 7-0. She can take the fight to the ground. She can strike. And, I didn't like that she was playing jiu-jitsu off her back against Jinyu Fry. Hopefully she shapes that up in this fight. I like the size advantage. I like the youth. Undefeated. I gotta go with Victoria Dudakova here, but with a lot less confidence than the bookies do. I'm actually probably not gonna have any bet on this fight. I think the over is a solid bet. Sam Hughes, always tough. Only got, I believe, her only finished loss in the UFC was to a doctor stoppage. So, she's always tough. And Dudakova, rising prospect. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Hughes pulls off an upset here, but I gotta go Dudakova for the pick. I think she gets it done by decision. Next up, we got Guram Kutateladze making his return, taking on a short notice opponent, Jordan Vucenic. Now, Vucenic, he is a rising star for sure. He's coming up from featherweight to lightweight in this fight on short notice. Fought just a week ago and got the job done in the first round. So not much fatigue, I would say, coming into this fight. He got the job done in the first round, made it look fairly easy, and he showed he's got the grappling. He's a great grappler. He's a great striker. He's extremely well-rounded. His last loss was to another great rising prospect in, I believe, I forgot his name, Phil Hughes or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but he's a Cage Warriors prospect as well. And, he got signed to the PFL. But in that loss, he was showing that he's got grit, man. He didn't quit one bit in that fight. He was trying to have some success in the grappling. Paul Hughes, I'm going to drive myself crazy if I don't find the name of that fighter. So give me a second here. But yeah, man. Paul Hughes, there we go. So Paul Hughes got the job done in a 5-round fight by decision. Paul Hughes just was able to defend the takedowns, was having some success working the body shots. And Vucenic, he didn't look like the undefeated prospect he was at the time, and he's beaten guys after that, 6-0, 13-8, 10-4, 12-8. Not great records by these fighters that he's faced since Paul Hughes. And I just think, it's a lot to ask for from a guy who just fought a week ago, coming down from featherweight up to lightweight, taking on a guy in Guram Kutateladze who definitely is one of the bigger guys of this weight class, almost 6 foot, making 155, strong. We saw him defend a lot of takedowns against Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz Gamrot was not able to have success in the grappling. I mean, some success, but you got to rate damage over the control time in these fights. And Vucenic, yes, he does get the fight to the ground in majority of his against majority of his opponents, but I think he's gonna struggle here against Guram, who trains with Hamzat. Who better to train with when it comes to getting the fight to the ground? And I just think that Sweden team is definitely just full of savages who are great grapplers. Guram is a great striker already, and I think he is going to have the striking advantage. He's just always on point. He's got the P's and Q's of the Muay Thai background, and he was getting tagged up against Elvis Brener, but I rate Elvis Brener's power a lot more than Jordan Vucenic. In Jordan Vucenic's fights, I think he is lacking that power punch, that knockout punch. And I think it's also very clear in his record, only 2 wins by knockout out of his 13 total. He's a great guy on the ground. He's a problem on the ground, but so is Mateusz Gamrot. And Guram Kutateladze was able to get the job done against a guy like that. So I'm gonna go with Guram Kutateladze. Longer time to prepare for this fight. Jordan stepping up on short notice. Credit to him, and I think long deserved that he does belong in the UFC, but just too much too soon, I think, in my opinion. And I think he's gonna have a great bounce back win after this, probably, but I gotta go with Guram Kutateladze to get this one done, either by late finish or decision. Next up, we got Shamil Gaziev taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Now, the UFC was definitely high on Shamil Gaziev. I mean, from what he showed, there should be no reason not to at the time, but I have to say, going from Martin Buday to Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a huge step up in competition. He was able to outclass Martin Buday, and then he got thrown into a main event with the number 12 ranked Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And Rozenstruik showed him there's levels. There's levels to this. And Gaziev, 34 years old, he came up short in that fight. The cardio is what killed him. This guy was breathing out of his mouth in the second round, at the start of the second round. So, he was really, it's definitely true that this guy has got cardio issues. And, I still think, despite all that, despite him being 34, not having a great cardio, I think he's still better than Don'Tale Mayes, man. Don'Tale Mayes, it's really tough to gauge how. I just don't think Don'Tale Mayes is UFC caliber. It's tough to say because he's got a knockout win over Andrei Arlovski, something Waldo wasn't even able to do, something Martin Buday wasn't able to do in his last one, and then he's just not looking good in his losses. And Don'Tale Mayes, I believe he's 6'6", He's huge for a heavyweight, and he definitely belongs at heavyweight considering, you know, his size. But I just don't think that the guy is all that, man. He doesn't pack that much power. His last knockout win was to Andrei Arlovski. Andrei Arlovski, come on, we gotta be honest, past his time now, way past his time, in his late 40s. And you know, the loss to Augusto Sakai was probably one of the most boring fights I had to watch back. Augusto Sakai was just having a lot of success in the clinch on the side of the cage. Don'Tale Mayes did not show much willingness to fight back or to, you know, evade the cage. And it's just, these wins are not the best, man. You know, Josh Parisian, Caio Machado, Andrei Arlovski, very winnable fights for a guy like Don'Tale Mayes. I think it ends here. Shamil Gaziev, higher ceiling, 34 years old. He's got very little time to get it together, but I do think he can get the job done here. So I'm going with Shamil Gaziev to get it done by late finish. Oh no, sorry, not late finish, because this guy, it does not have the cardio for a late finish. Either early finish or nothing else. Honestly, I gotta go Shamil Gaziev early finish here. I don't think that he's gonna try to take this fight all 3 rounds. I say Shamil Gaziev gets it done inside the first 2. Next up, we got Mohammed Yahya taking on Kaue Fernandes. Now, looking at the lines for this fight, I don't think Kaue Fernandes should be a -400 favorite, considering the guy hasn't shown much in the UFC to deserve that. Kaue Fernandes coming off a loss to Mark DeCasey, and it was a split loss, but I thought that Mark DeCasey easily got that fight 29-28 lay-and-pray decision. Watching it back, I didn't think it should have been a split. I thought Mark DeCasey does what he always does. You know, he's a everyone knows the story, striker turned grappler, and a phenomenal grappler at that, I will say. You know, he got the fight to the ground every round in that fight, and Mark DeCasey was able to have a lot of success. Kaue Fernandes playing jiu-jitsu off his back, not having many answers off his back, not able to get up, not able to get the fight, not able to keep the fight standing. Ended up losing that one to Mark DeCasey. And then prior to that, you know, the guy just does not fight often. You know, that fight was in November 2023. Before that, he fought in March 2023, and then September 2022. So, you know, 10 fights in almost 10 years for this guy. This guy fights like once a year. So not much consistency out of Kaue Fernandes, and it took him a lot of time just to come back for this one against Mohammed Yahya. And Mohammed Yahya, now another guy who's really not high level, man. Mohammed Yahya was getting it done in the UAE scene, became the UAE champion, lightweight champion. I think he's had some favorable matchups, and he still even got some losses, man. 12-4. He did not look good in that Trevor Peek loss. Trevor Peek is a dog. Trevor Peek is a savage. But when Trevor Peek is taking you down at will, having a lot of success in all facets of the fight, that's when I got to start questioning your potential, because I do think Trevor Peek is a savage, but he is there to be hit, and he is there to fight, but he is there to be hit. So Mohammed Yahya did not show much, didn't have much success, if at all, in that fight against Trevor Peek. And I do think that a guy like Kaue Fernandes, although he doesn't deserve to be a -400, he has shown that he's got the better resume in terms of the striking, and I think he's got good ground game. I think he can win moments by getting this fight to the ground, but I have to, you know, man, Mohammed Yahya at home, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something crazy go on if this goes to the scorecards, but I don't think this is going to the scorecards. I think Kaue Fernandes gets the job done here. I'm not as confident as the bookies are, but I do think that Kaue Fernandes does have the tools to get it done in this fight. So I'm going with Kaue Fernandes by late finish, second or third, or by decision. Next up, we got Azamat Murzakanov taking on Alonzo Menifield. Now, the pick is going to be Azamat Murzakanov. I did not like Alonzo Menifield's fight IQ in his last performance, and I just don't see him winning another fight in the UFC, honestly. I mean, this guy threw the whole game plan away. He must have, because taking on Carlos Ulberg, you shouldn't be steamrolling a guy with that much power, a guy with that much precision, and that's exactly what Alonzo Menifield went and did. He's got great power. He's got a big frame for the weight class. He's strong, but the fight IQ from this guy has just always failed him. And we saw that specifically in his last fight. Azamat Murzakanov is the opposite of that. Azamat Murzakanov is undefeated in his time in his professional career, and he's definitely getting up there in age. He's 35 years old, but he has shown that he can get the job done. He's got wins over Dustin Jacoby, Devin Clark, Stefan Nchukwi, and that third round against Dustin Jacoby did make me a little nervous. I will say that he looked a little bit fatigued in that fight, and maybe age is starting to catch up to the guy, but there's no denying, there's no denying that this guy has the way better ceiling than Alonzo Menifield, even at 35 years old. 13 wins. He's got 9 finishes. 2 in the UFC were both in round 3. So, although he had a shaky third round against Dustin Jacoby, he was able to get a ground and pound finish over Devin Clark in round 3, and then the flying knee against Stefan Nchukwi in round 3 as well. So, man, I think the pick is clear here on this one. Azamat Murzakanov, I'm picking him to get this one done. Does Alonzo Menifield have a chance? I think he's got a puncher's chance, but that's about it, man. I think Murzakanov is going to be aware of that power, and I think he gets the job done here. Sticks with his jab, which he's got a strong jab, uses it well. He's a southpaw, and I say late finish or decision for Azamat Murzakanov. Now, if Menifield bum rushes him, I think Murzakanov gets this one done early. So, man, if you are playing Murzakanov this week, I just say play him money line, because that fight can go multiple ways, man. But I do think he gets the job done. Next up, we got Joel Alvarez taking on Elves Brener. Easily one of the most interesting fights on the card. Brener, he had a tough outing against Miktabek Orobai in his last one, but he made Orobai work. He's and Alvarez, he got the job done in his last one against Mark DeCasey, a guy who we were just talking about, but that was over a year ago. So it's been some time since we have seen Alvarez in the cage, and the majority of Alvarez's wins are great because he's getting finishes. I believe he's got a 100% finish rate, but there's just always something negative to say, or there's just an asterisk attached to his fights. The win over DeCasey, there was a clash of heads, and you could argue that the fight should have been stopped in that moment, but it wasn't. He was able to take advantage of that and get the Darce choke finish over Mark DeCasey. In the win over Thiago Moises, yeah, he got it done in the first round, but he came in at 157.5 pounds. This guy did not show that he was trying to make weight for that fight. And then the fight just before that, 159.5 pounds, 6'3". This guy's 6'3". He is definitely trying to weight bully his way into the UFC, and he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on during the weigh-ins. If they allow that foolery to continue, it's going to be tough to be picking against him, because he's not really trying to make weight, and that is a serious advantage. We've seen that, especially for a guy who's 6'3". But when he did make weight, he lost to Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Arman Tsarukyan, we know, is now I believe, next up for the title. So we know his potential. But in that fight, Alvarez was playing jiu-jitsu a lot off of his back. Umar Nurmagomedov took advantage of that, finished him by ground and pound. He took Alvarez down fairly easily as well, because Alvarez, like I said, he's content to play off his back. He's got 17 out of his 20 wins, I believe, are by submission. So Alvarez, he's great off of his back. He's just great everywhere when it comes to the submission game. But against a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, it failed him. And I think against a guy like Elvis Brener, it's going to fail him, because Elvis Brener has yet to be finished by knockout or by submission, and he's got 11 submission wins of his own. I think Elvis Brener is going to make some serious problems for Alvarez if this fight goes to the ground. And I do think that Elvis Brener has the power advantage in this fight, so I have to go with Elvis Brener, the underdog, to get this one done. I think he's, plus 160 is the last I've seen on DraftKings, and I'm not really seeing why, besides maybe Alvarez coming in this fight and missing weight, having a serious weight advantage, then I guess you can justify that line. But I think at plus 160, Elvis Brener, who has shown to always be a problem, has finishing power. We saw him finish Kenan Kushevsky. Although Kushevsky took it on short notice, it only took one punch. One overhand left hook for Elvis Brener got the job done, flatlined Kenan, and he was able to withstand a beating from Guram Kutateladze and get the job done in round 3. He made Orobai work. I just think this guy has fought some serious competition in his rise up in the UFC, and this is definitely a very winnable fight for Elvis Brener. I gotta go Elvis Brener here for the pick. I'm picking him by late finish or decision. I think, the 1 year layoff is going to show for Joel Alvarez, and if he doesn't figure out the weight cut, then I might have to look into switching my pick, because Alvarez seems to have a great advantage when he's coming into fights 5 pounds over the weight limit. But if he does come in on weight, I do think that Brener has a great chance to get this one done and prove the odds makers wrong. I'm gonna go Elvis Brener here, the dog, to get this one done. Next up, we got Mackenzie Dern taking on Loopy Godinez. Now, Mackenzie Dern has not shown great ability to get fights to the ground, and that's where she does her best work. All right, she's definitely a jiu-jitsu specialist. We've seen her time and time again work her submission game. Loopy Godinez is a great wrestler in her own regard, and I think this is a very winnable fight for Loopy Godinez, honestly, in my opinion. I just think that Loopy Godinez tends to fight at the level of her opponents. It's almost like she tries to prove that she's better at their game, because in her last one against Virna Jandiroba, she was just so willing to grapple with a girl like Virna Jandiroba, and Virna Jandiroba is not a girl you want to be in grappling exchanges with. She ended up losing over 6 minutes of control time in that fight, and it was just a very sloppy decision win for Virna Jandiroba. But Loopy was able to win a round, and Loopy did not look good. Like I said, she fought at the level of her opponent, and I think if she keeps this one standing, she's going to look levels better than Mackenzie Dern. We know that Mackenzie Dern's striking is not powerful. We know that Mackenzie Dern's striking is awful in my opinion. I think she has one specialty, and when you're one-dimensional in the UFC, you are going to get exposed by these up-and-comers. Loopy is doing all the right things. She's training with Diego Lopez up in Mexico, a guy who is very familiar with the ground game. And Mackenzie Dern, I think that's the only way she wins this fight, if she can get this one to the ground and maybe work a submission win here. But I don't see her racking up control time against a girl like Loopy, and I I just have trouble seeing her getting this fight to the ground. So I gotta go Loopy Godinez here. I think she's got the way better boxing. She keeps this one standing, pieces up Mackenzie Dern for 3 rounds, or even less. Maybe Mackenzie Dern, we see some quit in her in this fight, and Loopy gets a finish here. I wouldn't be surprised, but I gotta go Loopy Godinez by decision in this matchup. Next up, we got Tony Ferguson taking on Michael Chiesa. 2 guys who have not had success recently. Tony Ferguson much less. I think he's on a 7-fight losing streak, and I got a feel for the guy, man. This guy has just not been looking good. Age has definitely caught up to him. That loss to Justin Gaethje is very fresh on my mind. Him getting pieced up in that fight, and then that front head kick loss to Michael Chandler still on my mind as well. I mean, this guy's not just losing, he's getting finished out there, man. He's getting finished. He's getting finished badly. I have trouble picking Tony Ferguson to ever win a fight again, man, honestly, man. And this one, yes, it's up at 170, so he's gonna have, you know, and not as much of a hard time on the scales, but I think that favors Chiesa, because Chiesa, 6'1", he was struggling to make 155. He's a former lightweight himself, and he showed when he moved up to 170 he can have success. And you know, that is something that we still have yet to see out of a guy like Tony Ferguson, who, you know, yes, he was fighting at, I believe he was fighting at 170 in The Ultimate Fighter, but that's not the level of competition that he's been facing lately. And Michael Chiesa, man, 6'1", he's adapted to welterweight. I believe he's going to be cutting, whereas Tony Ferguson is probably going to be coasting to make 170. I don't think he's going to be trying to, you know, cut that much weight. I don't think Tony Ferguson is going to put on much weight even after the weigh-ins. And a guy like Michael Chiesa, I do think that he has to cut a good amount to make 170 still. And although it has been some time since we see the guy in the cage, about a year layoff for Michael Chiesa, I do think that he can get the job done here against Tony Ferguson, man. I have trouble seeing Tony Ferguson ever win a fight again, man. To Michael Chiesa, he's got the submission skills to match with Tony Ferguson. The striking, I have to favor Tony Ferguson in the striking, but Michael Chiesa, he's a capable striker himself, and Tony Ferguson has been lacking that power lately. So, I mean, can Tony get a knockout finish at 40 years old? I have a very hard time seeing that. And I think we're going to be in a lot of grappling exchanges here. Now, Tony Ferguson is famous for that Darce choke, which Michael Chiesa, I believe he has 3 losses by Darce choke in the UFC. So if you are on the Tony Ferguson side, I think the Tony by submission play is going to be live. And I mean, in terms of betting on this fight, I certainly will not be betting Michael Chiesa at a -600. I mean, definitely does not deserve that whatsoever. Guy hasn't fought in pretty much a year, and he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak. So, you know, Tony Ferguson, this is definitely his most winnable fight out of his last 5 or 7. But man, do I pick Tony Ferguson here? You know what, I gotta stick with Michael Chiesa. I think Michael Chiesa gets the job done. He's more adapted to 170. Tony Ferguson, it'll be his first fight at 170, and I just think he's going to be small in there. I don't think he's going to have enough power to knock out a guy like Michael Chiesa, and I say Michael Chiesa gets the decision in this fight. Not proud of it, but I got to go with Michael Chiesa there. Next up, We got Chito Vera taking on Davison Figueiredo. Marlon Chito Vera fighting again after a terrible title shot performance in his last one against Sean O'Malley. And man, he just got outclassed in that fight. The low output, he got exposed for it. And, you know, it is what it is kind of situation for Chito Vera. He fought the champ and he did not look good. It might have been his last shot at the title. So, you know, he just, you know, if you were rooting for the guy that night, you were probably screaming at your TV because this guy just does not do enough. He needs to do more in the striking. He needs to do more everywhere in the fight. And he just fails to do that sometimes. Chito, he's got power for a bantamweight. I do think he's still top 15 material. You know, he's got a granite chin, great striker, decent takedown defense, but he is also willing to try his luck in the submission game. So he will accept some takedowns. He'll even pull a guillotine. We saw him pulling guillotines against Pedro Munoz, and we saw him pulling guillotines against Cory Sandhagen. So, man, Davison Figueiredo, he's a great grappler himself. I don't think that Chito Vera can afford to be pulling guillotines or to be trying his submission game against a guy like Davison Figueiredo, who former flyweight, but we saw him get it done against Cody Garbrandt. He's the first to submit Cody Garbrandt in his professional career. He had a very shaky first round, though. I will say that. I thought Cody Garbrandt, and the judges unanimously gave Cody Garbrandt that first round, which, as we all know, is hard to do now. It's hard for 3 judges to agree on a round nowadays. And at UFC 300, Cody Garbrandt definitely won that first round over Davison Figueiredo. He kept the fight standing, utilized his striking, and he was pop-shotting Davison Figueiredo for the majority of the round. He was hurting him. And Marlon Chito Vera, he's gonna have a size advantage in this fight. He's got decent takedown defense. He's got power. Is he going to bring it is really the question, you know? And man, Davison Figueiredo, his run in his time at bantamweight, you know, he's got a win over Rob Font and a win over Cody Garbrandt, 2 guys who were probably past their prime. Let's be honest. 2 guys that I think he could and should have beaten if he is going to make a case here at bantamweight. But now he's taking on a true caliber opponent here who I'm just not ready to write off, man. I think Chito Vera, the odds are probably like this because of his last performance, but it was Sean O'Malley, and Sean O'Malley showed that he's a deserving champion in his last fight. And I do think if this fight stays standing, I think Chito Vera is going to have a lot of success. So, you know, just using his reach, using his power, I can see Chito Vera winning a lot of minutes in this fight. And if he can keep it standing, like I said, I think he gets the job done here. So again, I'm going with another dog, Chito Vera. Yes, I agree he looked bad in his last fight, but it was against the champ. I'm not ready to call it quits. And Figgy, I think if it wasn't for his great grappling, we could see him, you know, lose to a guy like Cody Garbrandt in UFC 300. And, you know, Cody Garbrandt, he had at the time never been finished by submission, but Cody Garbrandt up there in age, like I said, past his prime. Chito Vera, not past his prime yet, still got the granite chin, still got the power. I think he's going to bring a lot of problems for Davison Figueiredo in this fight, and I say he gets it done. So I'm going with Chito Vera as the dog in this fight. I think he gets it done, man. Next up, we got the co-main event, Shara Magomedov taking on Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Now, I do think that Chito and Davison probably should have been the co-main event, but we are in Abu Dhabi, so let's not forget that Shara Magomedov and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk are going to take that simply because I believe the Magomedov last name, man. And Shara, he has proven that he has some star potential. He has top 15 potential. He's a phenomenal striker. The takedown defense is still, in my opinion, very questionable. It's very questionable. A guy like Tricoli, almost got him down, but if it wasn't for that fence grab, we could have seen Tricoli have a maybe win around in that fight with the takedown. But very clear fence grab that should have been something, at least give Tricoli the takedown or take a point away from Shara. But something had to be done, but nothing was done, and it worked in favor for Shara Magomedov. He ends up getting the win there against short notice opponent Antonio Tricoli, and he does what he always does. He's a great Muay Thai striker. He plays it safe. He definitely plays it safe, and he's defensively sound. I think these are all great qualities when you're taking on a guy like Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, who can be unpredictable at times. He has finishing power. His grappling is shit, and his submission game is terrible. His submission defense is god awful. And he's taking on a guy in Shara Magomedov who has the same deficiencies. So I do think this fight stays standing for sure. And I gotta go with the guy who's going to play it safe, who's going to keep the fight at his distance, and he's gonna piece up from the outside. I do think Shara Magomedov gets the job done here, and I say he gets it done by finish. So I'm picking Shara Magomedov. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to decision, but Mikhail Oleksiejczuk taking this one up on short notice. I believe he just got finished 2 months ago against Kevin Holland. Don't really like that he's coming back so soon. Oh yeah, a month and 3 weeks, and he's coming back against Shara Magomedov. That's a tough ask for a guy, and Shara Magomedov undefeated. I gotta go with Shara Magomedov here. I think he gets the job done over Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, he is game, but I don't think that I definitely don't favor him on short notice, and I don't think he gets it done here. Moving on to the main event. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of these picks, man. I'm running through them. Sorry for that I'm running through these picks. Normally I can give you guys more of an explicit breakdown, but it's Thursday. I'm trying to get this content out. Been busy with work, man. It is what it is. Let's get to this main event. Cory Sandhagen taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. Undefeated versus a guy who is definitely top 5 at bantamweight right now. Cory Sandhagen has shown a lot of improvement in the UFC. I believe he came in as, just a well-rounded striker, decent striker with some decent wrestling. And now he's showing that he can win fights just with his wrestling, and he can win fights, with his striking. He's got phenomenal footwork. He switches stances. He's always cutting angles. He brings a lot of problems for a guy who is going to, try and take him down for sure, because of his shot selection, his footwork. He is a tough guy to deal with for sure. And I think Umar Nurmagomedov, yes, he's game. I think he's game. He's 17-0, undefeated for a reason. This guy, he can get it done with his hands. He can get it done with his grappling. Obviously, majority of the time, he's getting it done with his grappling. But man, we saw him over Raoni Barcelos work that left hook finish. The rest have just been, rear naked choke submissions over Brian Boom Kelleher and Sergey Morozov, and we saw him have a little, struggle in the first round against Beksat Amakan in his last fight, but after getting dropped, I believe it was just a one-sided domination by Umar Nurmagomedov. He showed that he can get his grappling going, and he showed a lot of technique in those takedowns. He wasn't just getting a single leg and getting the fight to the ground. He was doing all of the right things when it comes to the fundamentals of working these takedowns, and I do think he can have a lot of success. But a guy like Cory Sandhagen, man, who's going to be moving around, this fight is 5 rounds. Cory Sandhagen is going to be cutting angles the entire fight. He has a great game plan in the majority of his fights, and that's one thing you have to credit Cory Sandhagen the most, is how he approaches every fight with a great game plan. I do want to pick Cory Sandhagen here, man. It's very tempting because the guy has proven, you know, against much tougher competition that he can get the job done. You know, although Umar is undefeated, and you know, this is a huge step up in competition. I think, you know, wins over Begzat Almakan, Hayoni Barcelos, Nate Maness, Brian Boom Callagher, Sergey Morozov. Those are great opponents, but those are not on the level that Cory Sandhagen has faced. I mean, Cory Sandhagen wins over Song Yadong, Chito Vera, Rob Font, you know, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes. These are very great wins. Mario Bautista, who is now on the up and up. Very great wins, very credible wins. And, you know, I do like that he was able to put it on Song Yadong. And I did not think that the Marlon Chito Vera fight was close. I have no idea why that fight was a split decision. I thought Cory Sandhagen won that fight very clearly. Now, his last 2, both going to decision. You gotta question the level of finishing potential that a guy like Cory Sandhagen has. I do think he should have maybe gotten a finish over a guy like Rob Font at this stage in his career, but Cory Sandhagen is strategic. He's always got a game plan. He was probably, you know, planning for the power of Rob Font and looking to stay on the outside, pick him apart. So, man, does he get the job done here is really the question. I think he's a live dog. I do think he's a live dog, but I have to go with the undefeated prospect, man. I think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to have success getting the fight to the ground if he's ever in a struggle with the striking. And, you know, just, you got to also credit the way Umar Nurmagomedov game plans with a guy like Khabib. Khabib laid out the blueprint for Bilal on how to get the job done against Leon Edwards. Umar Nurmagomedov, I am definitely, it's safe to say this guy is going to go in there with a game plan on how to, you know, cut the angles off of Cory Sandhagen, how to disrupt his flow, and how to get the job done. You know, I think Umar Nurmagomedov also admitted after that fight against Begzat Almakan that he came in with a hand injury, so he didn't see him at 100%. And hopefully, you know, he's not coming into this fight with many injuries, none, hopefully. So maybe we see the 100% version of Umar Nurmagomedov. And I know Cory Sandhagen is definitely looking to upset everyone. He is, you know, I've been following his channel, watching his content. This guy is preparing hard for this matchup. But I do, oh man, I do think Umar gets the job done, man. I'm gonna pick Umar with not as much confidence. Who knows, you know, maybe going into fight night or after the weigh-ins, I'm gonna be doing a betting show with Pick'em where I'll probably give you guys my final pick. But Umar Nurmagomedov, I do think he gets the job done here. I am not as convinced as most, but I say he gets the job done here by decision over Cory Sandhagen. I don't see him submitting Sandhagen. I mean, he can, but I think the more likely outcome is Nurmagomedov by decision. So there you guys have it, man. Those are my picks and predictions for the card. Hope you guys like it. Comment, subscribe, let me know what you guys think of these picks. I'm out of here, man. Catch you guys at the live betting show with Pick'em tomorrow in the afternoon, man. I'm out of here. Peace.